What does submechanophobia sound like? Hi creatures, how you doing? Over the past couple weeks on my way into work, I found myself kinda bored. On some days, not all days, but some days. And so, to cure my boredom, I would do what any sane, perfectly well-adjusted adult in today's day and age would do. Go on Reddit. Yeah. And while I was on Reddit, I would periodically see images of things in the water and thought, oh, those are kind of cool images. Ooh, those are really cool images, right? And I would see a lot of them over and over again to the point where I would eventually just fully go over to that subreddit. And that's when I realized the actual name of the subreddit, Submechanophobia, and went, oh, this is a fear that people have. And that people here People are scared of this. But why am I fascinated by it? While over there and checking out more of the subreddit, I realized I definitely don't have this fear, but I still think it's pretty cool to look at. Eventually, though, this would lead me over to YouTube to see more submechanophobia-related videos and stuff like that, and I stumbled upon the videos that were basically just slideshows with creepy ambience from like Five Nights at Freddy's and Minecraft and stuff like that. And then I had an idea. What does submechanophobia sound like? If submechanophobia was music, was sound, could be personified as something like a motif or a theme or something that you could hear, what would that be? And that's what leads us to this video. Now, beyond my fascination with submechanophobia, one of the other reasons why I kind of wanted to do this project is while watching these videos that had the creepy ambience, I thought, yeah, that sounds creepy. But it just sounds creepy. Doesn't really, for me at least, elicit any feelings of fear of being underwater, or really anything related to underwater. It just sounds creepy for the sake of creepiness. It's a good accompaniment, but we could get closer. We could do better. We could find something that just fits the theme of submechanophobia specifically. Maybe. But I couldn't find that anywhere else, so I thought I'd do it myself. So that's where we're here. But before we get into actually doing the music or the sound or whatever it is that I end up doing, we have to do a few things first. One of them is define submechanophobia. What is submechanophobia? Submechanophobia is an irrational fear of submerged objects. Typically, they're man-made objects. This rules out things like organic objects like trees, roots, dead animals, living animals, and rocks. But sometimes these things can elicit that feeling because it is something that is submerged. For people who have this fear, usually, the size of the object typically doesn't matter. The depth of the water typically doesn't matter. Also, the perspective, where a person is actually seeing this object, also doesn't matter. A person could be underwater with the object, or they could be standing on shore or on a boat or on a pier and looking down into the water at this object. That also doesn't matter. The feelings of submechanophobia can elicit in any of those scenarios. The clarity of water can sometimes matter. There are some people who have said on the subreddit that with clear water, it's totally fine for them to see a submerged object, but for murky water, they can't stand it. But that's not the case with everyone. So that's what submechanophobia is. How do we find out what that would be in music? We have to identify the elements that make submechanophobia a phobia. I think the first and obvious thing we should cover is that it involves things underwater. Water is not a very friendly environment to humans. We're not adapted to swimming in it. We're definitely not adapted to breathing in it. If we tried it, we would drown. So that's already a pretty big thing that I think contributes to why this is scary. Submerged objects. Sometimes objects underwater are just creepy to people. But there was a comment that I saw on one thread in this subreddit that I thought was very interesting. It's not just about the object is submerged, but it's rather that it's out of place. Why is it there? How did it get there? Because some of the objects that could be submerged that elicit these feelings are from things like shipwrecks or plane wrecks even. Planes are definitely not supposed to be at the bottom of the ocean, right? That indicates something went wrong and people may have potentially died. So there's a threat to human life there, or at least there was in the past, and just thinking about that is enough to scare people. So, an unsettling history, objects being out of place. Some of the other objects that could be submerged in water are things that are actively running, like dams, pumps, and drains. A lot of that is much more powerful than a single person is, and if anyone were to be in the water with these objects, with these machines, that would also potentially be a threat to your life too, because they are much more powerful than you. So I guess a sense of powerlessness around a lot of these underwater objects? Sure. Now, when it comes to many objects underwater, plenty of them may not necessarily be moving. They are stationary, and sometimes that creeps people out too, because it's not really an active threat, but it could be seen as one. And this actually leads into the next point. Some people just have an active imagination, and even though there's a stationary object that you know is not going to move, there are some people who think, but what if it does? What if it does start moving? What if it does come toward me? What if that thing is actively a threat to me and my life? And so that gives a sense of anticipation and tension. I'm consulting notes, by the way, if you didn't know. Oh, I actually like this one. Now, this one isn't actually strictly related to submechanophobia, but it involves how water interacts with light. When light hits the water, it refracts, which means the light will bend in different directions. And this actually has the effect of making objects look bigger than they should be at a farther distance. So if you're seeing something underwater and it's far away from you, it may look like it's closer or bigger than it's supposed to be, and this is what makes it hard for humans to judge distances and the scale of things underwater just using our eyes. We can't do it, we're not adapted to it, it's just not something that helps. So, when you see an object, whether it's clear or whether it's murky, you're not necessarily going to be able to easily tell how close or how far it is from you. Take this example. Try not to get too creeped out. You're in murky water, and you see a ship propeller. Not attached to a ship, but it's just there. How do you tell if that's a big propeller far away or a small propeller up close? Kind of hard to do. So, a sense of perceived proximity and not being able to tell how close or how far this potential threat is to you underwater. So, in summary, we have an unfriendly environment. We have a potential threat of an object underwater being more powerful than you, so a sense of powerlessness. Perceived proximity, you have no idea how close or how far an object is from you. It's not very easy to tell. The unsettling history of how the object got there. How the hell are we going to put that into sound? In this project, here are some things I'm not going to do. I'm not going to make a soundscape of water sounds. It's not going to be something that's too on the nose. I'm not going to have like sounds of bubbles or breathing into a regulator or swimming. I'm going to try not to make it sound like water because, well, that's not going to be specific to a water-based fear. It could be something that's like, well, this is just pleasant to listen to. This is 6 hours of water breathing, underwater sounds. No, I'm not going to do that. There's nothing scary about that. I'm also not going to strictly make this music or strictly make this sound effects either. I'm going to try and blend both of those or figure out what can work with both of those elements together. So I guess in trying to translate these elements into this sound project, I think underwater, I guess we could filter out the high frequencies, make it a little bit muffled sounding. Powerless against big objects, maybe big, heavy sounds, a lot of low end, maybe metallic sounds, not like metal creaks or groans or anything like that, but sounds that have a lot of harmonic overtones, maybe inharmonic overtones in them, or something that's just always sticking around, maybe a drone. Something with an unsettling history. That one's going to be a little hard. Perceived proximity, that one I might play with reverb with that one. Maybe. I don't know. That could be interesting. Anticipation, tension, I think that one's kind of the easiest one to do. I'll just maybe I'll have something that like kind of tries to start but never fully resolves. Yeah, I think we've got a good starting point for whatever this project is going to be. So let's go get into it. Okay, here's the project. I have it already set up and ready to go, and I did make some presets beforehand in FacePlant just to get some ideas out of my head about how I kind of wanted to approach this project because I was thinking about it for a few days now. And I did say earlier if I said it earlier. I did mention earlier that I didn't want it to be strictly one thing or another, and I didn't want to be too on the nose with how the sound is going to come through. Like, I didn't want there to be like a watery texture or anything that sounded too much like it was just water. However, I do still want to have that kind of feeling in there, so I will have some sounds that kind of give a same sort of feeling as being underwater, because being underwater is part of the fear of this, right? Submechanophobia, something underwater. My god, hair. Okay, in no particular order, I'm going to start laying down some ideas. I had one sound in mind. It's kind of a handpan-like sound. It is this sound that I made here in Phaseplant. And I had an idea for a kind of very, very short kind of lick or motif that I was going to have for this project, and it goes something like this. Okay, and so I'm going to record that. Ooh, kind of like that beating. Well, the first thing I think I'm going to do when I go back in here is to take out that higher octave, because I don't think that's going to work. I don't like that. Where is that? It's right here. Let's get those out of there. Let's extend these a little bit. Maybe increase the velocity on that just slightly. Both of them. Increase. That's good. Okay. Hide that. All right. Not going to be totally melodic or harmonic. I'm just putting stuff down there. All right, this next sound is a drone that I put together using a sample that I made a while ago. And let's lay that down. There's almost something Jaws-like about that, with the alternating notes and chords going on here. I think I sped up a little bit here, so I'll fix that in a bit. Actually, no, I'm not fixing that in a bit. Let's fix it now so that I don't have to worry about that later. Okay. Next sound. What is this next sound? That could work. All right. Actually, I'm curious. What if... Might be the wrong move. What if I had this as an intro and then lead into the rest of this? Let's see if that works. I like it so far. I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to think how this is going to fit in with a submechanophobia kind of theme for right now. I mean, I guess it still kind of fits a little bit. The bells kind of have a bit of a haunting quality to it, especially in the lower notes that I had down here, which I realized made an interesting texture paired with the other sounds. But I'm still trying to think of like how some of the other elements are gonna fit in here, because this kind of captures that sort of unsettling atmosphere of you being in the water with something that shouldn't be there and went wrong. Remember we talked about that element of this thing is not supposed to be there, and that being one of the scary things about it. I feel like I've captured that, but not quite the heaviness of this object, and not quite the perceived threat or the perceived perspective or proximity. I think the word I use is proximity. Yeah, that one I might cover later, because I kind of want to see what I have here before I can kind of add something that can sort of like build up to what people are going to think is going to resolve to something, only for it to never resolve to something. So that's going to be next to tackle. Could this breathy sound fit somewhere? I'm not sure. I don't know, actually. I might change that sound for something else, because it sounds fine on its own, but with everything else going on there, there's a lot of sound in the lower mid-range of the spectrum, and it kind of conflicts with it just a little bit. So maybe do something a bit drastic and cut all of this out. Maybe have a different kind of sound there instead. Okay, I have a modified version of that previous sound, and I have it going through a few different filters, and it sounds kind of like this. Now, the thought that I have for this is I want something with just a little bit more of a high end, as opposed to the sounds that I've already used, which is closer on the lower end of things. And it almost sounds like breathing through a regulator. And this is, I think, depending on who listens to it, could be a little anxiety-inducing, or at least representative of the anxiety you feel when seeing something, if you hear heavy breathing, right? And it's very stretched out, it's very long, like it's a very, very long inhale, exhale kind of deal, but right now I'm still not totally sure if I want to use it, because I have been playing around with this while the rest of this track has been playing, to see if I could find some place for it to fit. Hang on. I think that's what I have to do. I think I just have to make it shorter. Ooh. I think I fixed it. Maybe. Maybe. Let's give it a shot, shall we? Okay, at least I figured out the timing. Wasn't so sure about that stuff at the beginning, but I'm gonna fix all of this right now. I put those notes together so that it kind of has that full range of sound, and then it just goes from high end to low end. So you hear the hissing kind of goes shoo as it sort of quiets down with the at least the first region. Hear it? It goes shoo. But I have them a little too close to each other, so I'm going to go back and edit it one more time. Vox 1. Ooh. Very creepy sound. Vox 2. I think it's the same, mostly. Cut some of that low end out. Okay. See what we can do with this. I think it might be cool to kind of end it with that. Not that that's going to be the ending, but to sort of have that kind of keep going and not resolve. I think that could fit just well. Okay, I'm gonna record now a weird little sound. It sounds like this. Kind of a whistling sonar like demented dolphins type sounds. And I don't think I'm gonna have it play throughout. I think I'm gonna only record it in certain parts. So let's hear where that fits, shall we? Doesn't fit here. Nope, not yet. Not yet. Sure. We'll go with that. Why not? What's wrong with the little horror strings now and again? I think that might fit right in here, actually. So let's do that. Okay. Now, I heard it. I don't know if you heard it, but that actually cuts off at a certain point. I think that's the total length that I have to work with. So I'm going to move this region back here. And, yeah, listen to this over here. I clearly need to automate the modulation on that, and then we'll be good there. I have another instance of string ache here. I have spreads, and it's low strings, and I think I'm going to add it to the high strings part here, just cause. Okay, I think I want to start back here. See, this one, I think the strings, they start in tune, but then they spread out. So some go sharper and some go flatter, and it creates a kind of very weird cluster chord type of thing. But at the end, they come back to playing in unison, and so I don't really want the unison part at the end so much, so I move this down so I can get more of the detuned part where the high strings kind of reach their crescendo. Yep, real quick before I move on to the next thing that I'm going to do, which I think is going to be just change the arrangement. I think I have what I want for the sounds. For the most part, that could change. But I do want to go next into fixing the arrangement because I think that I want to do a little bit more lead-in before I have the hand pan kind of carry the rest of the piece. Before I did that, I was changing the sound of the breath, and I added some psych delay to it that I pitched down an octave. So it has that kind of delayed, lower pitched kind of sound following after the immediate release. Set a delay and bounce it compress it maybe as well. I think so. I think that'll be nice. How does that sound now? Okay, I think I figured out what I want to do. With this sound anyway. I want it to start quiet and then gradually get louder. So I'm going to remember to do that. I think one of the things about this sphere is that it's not necessarily instantaneous. It's not something that just shows up. It can happen gradually. Let's say you're around water or even in water and you aren't even aware of some object that's there, and then it creeps in and you see it. It's something that kind of just shows up, right? It's not something that starts off right immediately as like, boom, I'm here. So I kind of want to get that feeling here, and also just sort of explore the kind of effect side of this this project before going into what I already have recorded here. And so that's what this is going to be. I know I said I wouldn't do on-the-nose effects type stuff, but I think this should be fine for just a little bit, just as a sort of swell in, swell out. So let's record that. Okay, this second sound that I have is kind of like a drone. It's a bit more on the metallic FM side of things, but it's also a little bit noisy, and it sounds kind of like this. I was thinking of sort of having that kind of come in with the same time as this, but a little bit later, and it starts quiet and gets louder as the pace goes on, sort of getting toward the thing that is under the water that people are afraid of, right? It's kind of what I'm going for. All right, now this next sound. Oh, this one's weird. Okay, so a little bit of history about this sound. Let me just show you. It's a sample that I made a long time ago, a number of years ago, and I don't remember what I used to make it. I think it was a reactor ensemble. You know what? It sounds weird for me to say it, but I really am starting to think this. This, I think, is pretty much a perfect sample for this kind of thing, because I can already hear all of the elements that I want. Sort of the the uneasy, kind of unsettling nature of it, the filtering of the sounds. It almost sounds like there is a little reverb in it, but there isn't any. I mean, besides what I added here, but I mean, if you take this out, it still sounds pretty similar to what it already is. And it almost has this kind of quality of like a person breathing into their regulator and making a noise like they're trying to talk, like, right? Or like whale calls. It's kind of weird how it fits. Why don't I just scrap this whole project and just use that sample and say we're done? Nah, it's too easy. Too easy and too cheap to do that, so I'm not going to do that, okay. Instead, I'm going to just add it to this piece. To the overall piece. Here's what I did. I moved those two regions over. I'm going to use this new sound to intro those other two sounds and maybe see if I can work in one of the higher sounds here. I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know if that's going to work either. So instead, I'm just going to go with my original idea and do that. Okay, be quiet, be quiet. I need to record you now. Be quiet. I think it works. I think we're good there. Okay. This project keeps changing all the time. So, it turns out I really like that rumbling sound because I just heard that in isolation. I'm like, that's kind of cool. I feel like that could help set the mood for this before everything else comes in and you hear it. And I decided to move that to the beginning, even before the intro to the other intro to the intro section of this piece. And then, after that finishes, before we go into the other musical part of this, there's just that, and then a little bit of that metallic pad coming in, but not on all of it. There's still just the rumbling on its own, just a little bit of it. Ooh. That's all you need. That is the depth, the size, and the fact that you cannot tell how far or how close it is all in that sound, all just in that moment. Feel as though that part of the sound is just a little too quiet once this part kind of starts up. So I am going to first of all move it back, and then I think figure out when it starts, and then I'm probably going to make the rest of this region just a little bit quieter anyway because it's could conflict with this. What was that? What was that? Was that this one? Hang on. Ooh, that one's better. I think that's fine. Okay. Now I think it's time for me to do the post edits of this, because I like what I have right now. I do. So let me go make those edits now, shall I? I shall. Okay, I think I have my track. That's at least the first draft of a track anyway. So, one thing I added, I took the handpan sound and duplicated it down here for this track, and this track is a bell sound, which has a lot of reverb, has delay, and it has some pitch bend on the release only. So you can kind of hear the pitch going down, but only after I release a note. So if I hold it down and it just decays, the pitch is stable. The pitch is just straight. But if I let go, it starts going down, which is really great for release type stuff. So here I have some regions that are kind of long, so they're sustained, and it doesn't pitch down, but as soon as I let go, that will drop, and that sounds like this. Like an object sinking to the bottom of the ocean, or you sinking to the bottom of the ocean. And then there's the rumble again to close out the track. I don't really know if I succeeded or failed at this project. It was mostly an exploratory kind of foray into figuring out what kind of thing I could come up with for personifying submechanophobia in sound, in music, in whatever the hell, right? And yeah, I've got this project, and it sounds like this from the beginning, from the top. I think I did it. I did something. I did something. I don't know what I did, but I did something. So, that is my experiment with submechanophobia, figuring out what it sounds like. Now, in this piece, I feel like I went a little bit more toward a kind of movement type of piece rather than a full-on sound design thing, right? And it kind of works in stages, at least, the way I have it set up, and not just the overall feeling of it, but more so events. But yeah, that is my exploration into figuring out what does an irrational fear sound like as sound, or as music, or as something like this, something that you can hear. If you want me to do more like this, let me know. Thank you for hanging out, for watching, for checking it out, and for being momentarily scared if it did scare you. Hopefully it didn't scare you too bad, because it's not like I put an image or full-on video of something that would trigger your submechanophobia. Just tried to figure out what the music would be for that. So yeah, anyway, that's the project. That's the sound. That's the video. Thank you for hanging out and watching, and I'll see you in some other video some other time. Have yourselves a good night and have happy nightmares. Bye-bye.